Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to our Facebook Live presentation today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jackson Mummy, and for the past 25 years, I've been successfully preparing students to take their bar exams around the United States, and glad to share some time today with you to talk about a subject that I know is going to be on the thoughts of a lot of you, which is some things to do while you wait for your bar exam results. In fact, 5 things to do while you wait for your bar exam results. And so I want to share these 5 things with you. We'll give you some links in our notes, and we'll be producing this as a podcast as well as a Facebook Live presentation. So I hope that you'll stick with me and let me talk about these 5 different things you can be doing while you're waiting for results. And for those of you who have not yet taken your bar exam, you might say, well, what's that mean for me? Well, probably not as meaningful as it would be for the people that are just now finishing their tests and waiting. But I think it's useful always to kind of look ahead and see what's going on in the world and what you might need to be doing or want to be doing or thinking about doing after you get your tests finished and you're waiting for your results. Now, for those of you that are not particularly familiar with the process, what happens is the exams are finished now, and now we enter a period of waiting, and that waiting will be different based on what jurisdiction you're in. Florida, for example, is one of the first jurisdictions to release results, and they'll take about 6 weeks after the exam. But some of the jurisdictions like California and Georgia will take much, much longer. Typically, the July results in California don't come out until mid to late November. Georgia is usually about that same time period. And in between Florida, California, and Georgia, we've got a whole bunch of jurisdictions. And then you've got states like New York that kind of release, randomly. One's never quite sure when they're going to come out. So it's an interesting period of time, and it can be a very frightening kind of time, I think, for a lot of people, just in terms of what should I be doing? What should be going on? How do I handle the stress and the emotion and the things that go with this sudden buildup of energy to take the test, and then poof, the air is all out of the balloon and you're just in that mode of, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And how do I sort of put it all together in my own brain? How do I reconnect to the world, and what do I do? And I think that for some people, the reality is that the results will come so quickly. They'll just be done with the exam, forget about it, then they'll wake up one day and the results will be there. And hopefully they'll be good results, and they'll go, oh, okay, and they'll move on. But I think that's actually not the norm anymore. I think for most people, this time of waiting is actually pretty painful. And so if you're watching or listening today, I think that it's probably because you're already thinking about that process and thinking about all the what ifs and have those periodic flashbacks to the exam itself. Now, I want to just say that if you're having those kinds of flashbacks, I definitely don't want you to think that I'm making fun of you. Because really what's happening in a very real sense is that you have something that I would describe as post-traumatic stress disorder. You've been through this high stress, very difficult process, and now you got to process it. You've got to get through it and literally move on. And if you don't, it's debilitating. It can really destroy your ability to function. But the good news is it doesn't have to be that way. I've seen people who literally get tied up in knots during this period of time, but the vast majority of people figure it out, work it out, and there are some coping mechanisms that I think are pretty useful. So I want to share with you, for those who are just coming on or listening, I want to share with you 5 specific things that I think you can do while you're waiting for your bar exam results. So let's jump into the first of those 5 things. And the first is, without reference to political organizations, you need to move on. What I mean by that is you've got to find other interests, other things to replace your bar study time while you're waiting for results. Now, for many of you, if you came from the world of law and you're working in a law firm or some sort of legal practice, that's easy. You just go back to work. But for many of you who are waiting for your bar results in order to begin or advance your legal careers, you don't have that option. And so as a result, it's really a good time, I think, to start looking aggressively for volunteer and intern opportunities if you didn't have any before. It's also a really good way to network, just getting out, getting some practical experience, finding out who you can help. going to your law school, finding out what's available, what kind of internships and externships might be available, getting yourself in some position to do some work down the road. And of course, it's a great time to interview if that's part of your process. So certainly you want to be doing that. The reason I suggest volunteer work right now is that because if you're not a licensed attorney, there's obviously a limited range of what you can do. But the point here is that you want to reconnect with the reason that you went through this trauma in the first place. In other words, you want to get back to what makes you you, what feels good, why you're doing law in the first place. And I think it's a good time to be doing that. Now, if you're really stuck, contact your local bar association. Find out where volunteer opportunities might exist. Places like legal aid offices, churches, nonprofits, other places in the community. And I will say this, regardless of your political views, this particular time is a great time to get involved in politics. If you've got a political bent or interest, politicians everywhere, whether it's presidential candidates or local candidates, are always starving for volunteers and helpers. It's a great way to network. There's a lot of people with legal connections involved in political campaigns. And really, it's a great way to find out what's going on in your world and in your community. And I can tell you right from the highest levels of the presidential campaigns down to the school board elections, people are always looking for volunteers and helpers. Now, you might choose to help out a couple hours a week, maybe it's more than that, but the point is you have to move on with your life. You've got to find some things to be doing. And so I would really encourage you to do that. I think that you'll find that there are lots of places where you can volunteer your services without practicing law, without a license, and be very, very helpful. So that's the first of our 5 tips about what you want to do while you're waiting for results, is you've got to move on. You got to get involved in something. The people that I'm most worried about at this stage are those that just sit there and sort of like watching the clock move on the hands on the clock moving. They're just counting down the days. You got to have more going on in your life than that. And so at the very least, get out, interview, be looking at things, moving on. So that's number 1, is move on. Number 2, I've just come back from my own vacation, and I got to say, this number 2 is really important. You got to hug it out. If you've got a family, and most of you do, if you have friends, we hope that some of you still have friends left. If you've got a job, even better, or maybe you've got all 3. This is a really good time to reconnect with any and all of those. You remember that while you were studying for the bar, there were all those missed date nights, the hangout times, the work assignments that maybe you didn't get to because you just had to study. Well, you may have forgotten a lot of that, but believe me that the people around you, they do remember all of those missed moments. And I think that this is a good time to make up for some of that, excuse me, by being extra attentive. I mean, you want to spend some additional time with your friends, with your family. I schedule a lot of coffees at this time of the year just to catch up with old friends and kind of see what's going on. I just finished a lovely 3-day vacation with my son and his family here at Disney World. It's a great time to do those sorts of things and just reconnect. And I have to do it as a teacher, and I would certainly encourage you to do it as well. Now, the reality is that you're probably very tired from the bar exam and from studying, but to the rest of the world, here's what happens. You went to the bar exam, you took the bar exam is over, enough, get back to the world. And so while you might be struggling a little bit about how to make that transition to everybody else, no more forgiveness. And so what I said in my blog post is that your presence here on planet Earth is now required. There are no excuses. You just have to be there and you have to engage. The bar results will come soon enough, but you've got to get back into the world. You've got to re-engage with family and friends and work. And truthfully, if you've been at work and trying to balance your work and your bar study, and this is particularly true for attorneys in practice who are moving, you got to go back and take care of those clients, make sure that they know you're still there and what's going on. Your boss needs to know you're still in the game. Your family needs to know that. Your friends need to know that. So there's a lot of things going on in the world, obviously. This is a great time to reconnect and kind of see what's going on there. But just remember that to everyone else, the bar exam was a finite, one and done kind of event. It doesn't have a lingering implication to them right now. And so when you start saying, well, I'm just waiting for bar results, really, they don't want to hear it. It's over and you need to engage. And you can't use studying for the bar as a reason to stay out of all of those things now. So, if there's a list of items around your house that had to be done, this is the time you're going to do them. And you just need to do it. Well, that's number 2 of our list of the 5 things while you're waiting for bar results. Number 3 is a big thing, and I'm clearing my throat because number 3 is you got to talk it out. Many bar takers, not all, but many, have to get the test out of their systems. But as I just said in item 1 about moving on and item 2 hugging it out, the rest of the world is totally over you. They really don't care about you or the bar exam anymore, and they don't want to hear about it anymore. Ooh, that's harsh. Harsh, Jackson. I mean, really? They don't want to hear about the most important test in my life? No, they really don't. They really don't care. And it's not because they don't care about you. It's because you've been studied for the test for, a couple of months or 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years, and they're just over it. The people around you are over it. Still, you've got, for some of you, the need to talk about it. You just absolutely do. And in that situation, there's a couple of things I think you can do. One is you can certainly journal it. You can write it out, type it out, use your electronic device. You can use a recording device and record it and then transcribe it. I mean, you can do a lot of things, but you certainly can talk it out. You can talk to small animals, dogs and cats. They'll listen attentively, not so much the cats, but the dogs pretty much. And you can tell them about what's going on and how no one understands your life and what's happened. But at the end of the day, you're probably going to want to talk to a human being. And so what I would suggest is that you negotiate with some human in your life and say, look, I have just got to talk this out one time. I've got to go through it. I've got to tell you all the miserable details. I've got to share with you all of the craziness and my concerns and fears and all those things. But in exchange for that, I promise it's one and done. I'm just going to do it. Excuse me, I'm going to have to take a sip of my coffee here. See, this is what happens. You get out of lecture mode. Your voice goes. Okay, I'm back. What you need to do is to say, we're going to have this conversation. I'm going to talk to you, tell you everything that's gone on. I'm going to just spill my guts. And then I promise I'm done. And there will be no more. I'm not going to dribble it out in little pieces. It's just going to be one and done. And maybe if it's a spouse, a partner, close family member, you can bribe them with a lunch or a dinner or something fun. We'll go to a baseball game, and while we're watching the game, I will regale you with bar exam stories because, what could be better? And as you do all those things, I think what you begin to discover is that you'll get it out of your system. You'll actually force it out, be done with it, and because you made the deal that you're going to talk it out, then you're really over it, and then stick to that deal. Really and truly. If someone's brave enough to listen to you talk about the bar exam ad nauseum to them, then you need to be willing to hold your end of the deal and say, okay, once I've talked this through, I'm really done with it until results come out. Not to worry, we'll just get to that point. So I hope that would help. Certainly for those of you that are in a Celebration Bar Review course, you have an additional forum, which is our private Facebook group, the one that I'm broadcasting on initially here today, which is the Extra Mile for bar exam students. And I think this is a great resource for you to use to write about your bar experiences if you'd like to be able to connect. I know that many of you have made those connections, and really it's a great source to just kind of say, here's what I saw, here's what I heard, here's what I feel about the test. And to do that in a supportive world and in a supportive environment. So I encourage you, if you're in our course, to go ahead and do that. Because I think it will really help you have that moment. Now, if you're not in our course, this particular site is off limits and you can't get to it, but there are plenty of other places where you can go and post and write about in a digital world. But in some event and in some way, I think you got to talk it out. And I do think, and the reason I mention this, some of you feel the need to talk it out, but don't do that. And the problem is it's sort of like a volcano. The pressure just keeps building and building and building, and then it's going to erupt. And that's what we don't want to have happen. So in some way, find a way, either journal it, write about it, talk to your dog, talk to a family member, make a deal, go on the Facebook group, post somewhere, go crazy with your Twitter account, Snapchat to your heart's content, but do something and get over it. So that's number 3, talk it out. Number 4, when we're thinking about what you need to be doing while you're waiting for results, is to assume the best. Oh, folks, I just don't know how to say this with any more emphasis or belief or concern. Bar takers, generally, lawyers, generally, are terrific at what we call the parade of horribles. You know, here's all the bad things that happened, and there's the parade, and I'm going to run to the front of the parade to lead it. You know, it is entirely possible that you failed the bar exam. It is also entirely possible that you passed the bar exam. Now, here's the difficulty. There is no way for most of you, I would say after 25 years of doing this, so more than 50 exams, I would say there's probably fewer than 2 or 3% of the people I talk to who actually definitively know for a fact that they passed the bar exam after they've taken it and before results come out. Most people have a pretty good feeling about it, but very few people are absolutely certain. Now, there are some people that are absolutely certain they failed it for reasons like my computer stopped working, or I didn't write, or I got sick, or I didn't finish all of the multi-state. I mean, there could be some reasons why you would absolutely know you failed. But again, those are at the margins, and the vast majority of people, probably 90% or more of bar takers, really are in this vast middle where they don't know if they passed or failed. They have a feeling and inclination, but they really don't know. And a lot of them will say, I don't want to jinx myself by saying I passed, or I don't want to make it such that I say I failed, but I kind of feel like I did. And the point is, for most bar takers, your feelings after the exam are not terribly accurate. I would say that when people tell me how they did after the test, while they have a sort of a direction that they're headed, I feel pretty good about the test, or I don't feel good about the test, and while that's helpful to know, by and large, most people really don't know what they did, and they don't know how the results are going to come out. So my 4th tip is that you need to assume the best. And because this test has such a narrow range of acceptability of passing, and it's such a fine line distinction, you know, did you make it or not? Did you, 1 or 2 questions? And you're not going to know that in advance. So because of that, I think you should assume that you passed. That's my view. You should assume you passed. Now, if you're in our course, you absolutely should assume you passed. Even if you took one of those big box bar reviews and you did all that crazy IRAC memorization rule stuff, issue spotter, assume that you passed. You really should do that. But here's the interesting part. A lot of those big box folks come to me during this period of time and they say something to the effect of, well, I did everything that my bar review told me to do, fill in the name of the big box. I memorized, I made flashcards, I created outlines, I did this, 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 and this. I took their tests. I got back my anonymous graded essays. But I'm pretty sure I failed. So I'd like to start studying now. Well, here's my view about this. I generally say to people, don't do that. Don't start studying before you get your results back, unless you are really definitively certain that something went wrong during the test, like a technology failure, like you didn't write one of the essays, like you completely didn't write a performance test, or you finished 75 out of 100 MBE questions in one of the 2 sessions. If there's something like that and you know for a fact that as a result of that it's virtually impossible for you to pass, okay, great, start studying now. But for most people, studying right now is not a good idea. And the reason is that it just simply extends this study period without a break. And I think for a lot of people, that's really a bad plan. You know, you need the mental and physical break. You need the distance and the time to be able to see, hey, here's what I was doing now. Let me pull back and look at this a little bit more and then start fresh if I need to. Now, I recognize for those of you in states like California and Georgia that have late result release dates, it puts you under a lot of pressure, and it's hard when you've got to then turn around and take the exam in 7 weeks or so. But here's the good news. You'd already studied for the test, so your next time around should be a review of the review. And so I don't know that it's as critical for you as it might be for somebody that's just coming out of law school or just coming out to take the bar after 10, 15, 20 years away. So in a sense, I don't think you're really at that big of a disadvantage. Now, it's obviously better if you're a Florida bar taker and you get your results 6 weeks after the exam. You've got an extra, 4 to 6 weeks of study over somebody from California. But you're in the same boat with all the other Florida bar takers, if that makes sense. So don't start restudying now. Don't pull out your old materials. Don't pull out your outlines. Don't listen to lectures. Don't do flashcards. I had somebody that said to me, I'm going to do 50 multi-state questions a night from now until results come out. Why? To what purpose? You don't know if you passed or failed. You don't know what the benefit is. The studying that you do is going to be at best unfocused and at worst just miserably useless. Why put yourself through that? Why not take the time and do the other steps we talked about? I mean, talking to other people, reconnecting, volunteering, having a life. And then if the results turn out to not be good, okay, then you deal with it. But you see, I think what happens is we get into this mindset of, I've got to assume the worst always because I'm a lawyer. And therefore, I'll assume I failed. And because I'm assuming I failed, then I should just start studying right away. And I mean this quite honestly, I have never seen anyone studying during this interim waiting period where I thought that it made a bit of difference for them ultimately in their results. Never, not once. I actually believe if you just take the time off, if you put your hands up, off the keyboard and go do something else for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, you'll be so much better off. Your studies will be so much more effective if you do have to come back. And hey, the good news is if you assume you passed, then you didn't waste all that time studying. So I know that's a counterintuitive position. I know there are a lot of people out there that say, oh, must start right away. If you took the bar, start studying right away for the next one. And most of those people are law school deans, by the way. Crazy to me that people would take that position. So my view is you can do a lot better things with these few weeks off than to be studying for the next bar exam. Well, that takes us to item number 5 of our list of the 5 things that you should be doing while you wait for bar results. And it's actually kind of linked to this one. Up to this point, we've said, that you need to, move on with your life and hug it out with your family and friends and work, and you need to talk it out with other people. I said you should assume the best. But my 5th step is you should do your research now. Look, if it turns out that you did fail the exam, those moments and hours after you get your results are really tough emotionally, and that's putting it mildly. And that is not the best time for most people to consider what their next step should be. So if you are one of those Eeyore kinds of people, oh, I guess it's a good day if it were a good day, which I don't think it is. If you're one of those, I'd rather you be a Piglet or a Pooh. Today is the best day. But if you're one of those people that sees the gloom in everything, then use this time to do your research. Think about what you want to do. If you don't fail, do you want to sit for the next administration of your state's exam? Do you want to change jurisdictions? And normally I wouldn't say much about changing jurisdictions, but I will say that what happens with the UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam, is that we now have kind of a shifting landscape. And so we've got some tests that have changed their form. New York changed in July from a state exam to the UBE. In February of 2017, New Jersey changes, South Carolina changes. We've got Massachusetts coming on board to the UBE in 2018. In California, we have a change in the format of the exam starting in July 2017. So there are some things happening that might make you say, you know what, I want to think about which exam I want to take or which date I want to take. So this would be particularly significant, I think, for Cal bar takers. If you get your results around Thanksgiving and you're thinking to yourself, do I really want to sit for the February 2017 Cal bar, which is the 3-day test, or do I want to just wait, start my studies now, and study for the July 2017 exam, which will be a 2-day test? Maybe that's a better idea. But the time to think about all those things is now, not the day the results come out. And I think that that's really the point I want to make, is that you need to prepare in advance. If you're someone that's been taking the big box bar review, there might be a little small voice in your head that sounds remarkably a bit like mine, saying, psst, the emperor has no clothes. That course doesn't work well. You got a 30% pass rate nationally out of those courses. Maybe you should think about doing something differently. And if that's been your thought process, then the time to think about it is now. I would invite you to join me on the free live masterclass I do called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. Be a great opportunity for you to consider what it would be like if you have to take the exam, if you're one of those Eeyore people. We do those on Thursday at 3 p.m. All you got to do is click on the link for celebrationbarreview.com. You'll see the button and you can claim your free seat. Really encourage you to do that if you're not in our course. But in any event, I think it's a time for you to start doing your research. What do you want? Do you want a mentored course if you didn't have one? If you were in our course and I hope it doesn't happen, but if you failed, do you want to change from basic mentoring to personal mentoring? Do you want to do something differently in the way you're studying? Do you want to change jurisdictions? All of those are really good questions to ask, but they're not really good questions to answer in the heat of the emotions of getting results out. And so I encourage you to take the time now to talk to the people that you want to talk to, make the decisions that you want to make, be prepared. If the news comes out for you that you passed, well, that's great news. You can throw all that research away, or you can put it online, or you can tell people, hey, you should take Jackson's course, it's good. But if not, if you don't do well, if you don't pass, then you've got a plan prepared in advance, and then there's a limited amount of disruption. You just transition right into the work that you need to know and to do. So as I said, if you want to know more about Celebration Bar Review, absolutely, you can talk with me. One of the things that we do is to offer a free consultation for people that are not in our course, and we'll put a link in there so that you can schedule that time to talk to me, and we're glad to do that. And certainly if you've been taking or took another bar review course, I think you owe it to yourself to find out why we're different and why our students are so passionate about what we do and the results that we get. If you're in our course, and you want to talk about the exam, you have the opportunity to set up what we call a postmortem conference. I'm glad to talk with you for 10 or 15 minutes. It's not quite the same experience as you get with a friend or a loved one, but at least I'll listen to your stories, and I promise not to make too much fun of the agony that you're going through as you recount all of that, although sometimes it is kind of funny in a weird, sick way. But I'm definitely willing to listen and share with you and give you that feedback. And of course, in the podcast and in these Facebook Live presentations, I'll continue to talk about feedback as we come out of the tests and more information as we get it. But I wanted to give all of you these 5 tips for things that you could be doing while you're waiting. And so just to recap, I really would suggest that you go ahead and move on with your life while you're waiting. Get involved in volunteer activities or work or internships, or just getting back to work. Secondly, get reconnected with the world, with your family, your friends, and your job. Third, talk to somebody. Talk to me, talk to your Facebook group, journal it, write it down, do something, talk to a family member, but get it out of your system. Fourth, I want you to assume the best and not try to start restudying immediately. I don't think that that's a good plan. And then finally, number 5, do your research now. In case you don't have good results, know what your plan is. What exam do you want to take? What jurisdiction do you want to study? When do you want to study? What course do you want to use? What level of service do you want? Have some idea about all those things in advance of the results. I really hope that all of you have great results, obviously. I'm looking forward to that. I think that based on the feedback from our students, we are going to see good results, even though the exams were quite difficult across the country. And we'll be talking a lot more about that over the weeks to come. But for today, I just want you to know that all of this trauma of the exam will recede from your brain. It will begin to move away, and you'll begin to reconnect into the world. And that's a good thing, and something that we really hope for. I appreciate all of you that came online today to watch, and appreciate your comments and your thumbs ups and support. And I look forward, for those of you who are watching this later, feel free to type in your comments, and I can respond, and you'll see it plugged back into the video as we go on. So wish everybody well, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for now. Bye-bye. Well, that's our episode for today. Thanks so much for joining me and for being part of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. Now, if you'd like to catch up on prior episodes or check out the show notes, you can do that by going to our webpage at celebrationbarreview.com. Click on the link at the top of the page for podcasts, and there you'll find all of our previous episodes as well as the show notes. You can also subscribe to the podcast from that site, or you can go to iTunes and subscribe there. Just type in the Extra Mile Podcast for Bar Exam Takers, and you can subscribe and be part of the podcast series. And we would love to have you do that. While you're on the iTunes site, we would also really appreciate you giving us a quick, honest rating and review. That feedback is really useful to me as I prepare these episodes. It only takes about 30 seconds, so I hope you'll do that. Just type in the name of the podcast and give us your rating and review. Again, if you've got any questions or you'd like to know anything else about Celebration Bar Review or the courses that we offer, visit our website, or I invite you to contact us. My email is jackson@celebrationbarreview.com, and I look forward to hearing from you and to seeing you along the extra mile very shortly. See you on the pass list. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile Podcast for Bar Exam Takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.